Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Marian Pagano. I am Chief Executive Officer of Blackhawk Data. Welcome to our June edition of Women in Tech. Thank you guys very much for joining. I appreciate you guys giving us the time. I appreciate everyone here in the audience for coming as well. Thank you for being part of my community and my network. I appreciate how much you guys have put into and how much effort you put to coming to these events and making them what they are today. So thank you very much for that. Today's topic is going to be talking about overcoming career challenges. I'm sure there's not anybody out there who hasn't had a career challenge or two in their time. So we're going to kind of navigate through some of those conversations to kind of help you guys along. Anybody who has a career challenge right now, where we can kind of help you guys through. My hope and my goal is always that one thing someone says gives you a takeaway that you can use in your own life. What we're going to do is start off by introducing our panel, and we're going to give a short overview of themselves and their career. We're going to start with Meredith.
Hi, everybody. I'm Meredith Shirali. I'm the Director of Marketing for Exclusive Networks. I'm based out of Orlando, Florida. I have been in the channel for over 30 years and had the pleasure of working at a partner, a vendor, and now in the distribution world. So thank you to Marianne and the team for being here.
I'm Alicia Rasta. I head up global sales for a company called Televerdi. We do outsource business-to-business sales development across the globe. And I've been there for 15 and a half years, which clearly means I love it so much. Based in Tempe, Arizona, and really excited to join you today.
Nice. My name is Holly Brooks. So I am the Director of Managed Services and Professional Service Delivery for Adapture. I'm also co-owner of FlexPath IT. So I have only been in the channel for about 8 years. I have a non-traditional path. So I came from healthcare, firefighting, you name it, and then had a midlife crisis and went into IT. But I'm excited to be here, so thank you.
So that's a good segue for me. So we're going to talk a little bit about career paths, right? How you got into technology. I always tell people, technology finds you. You don't really find technology. I tell people, for me, it was actually my grandmother who got me into technology. She found a job in the Penny Saver. For those that are young, that's a newspaper that used to come to the house. And there was a job opening for a receptionist, and she kind of struggled with it and said, "You need a job before your mother kicks you out of the house. So here, go do this." And I've pretty much been in technology ever since. Yeah.
So I also, through opportunity, and never know when that opportunity is going to arise. So I actually did an internship during college in the IT space. And just from there, new opportunities over the years of, following mentors or, just having a new opportunity come to me in the channel. So again, just always keep your eyes open because you don't know when the next opportunity is going to come your way.
Mm-hmm. So mine is essentially having people behind me that were pushing me down certain paths. So they would see something in me that I didn't necessarily see in myself, and started my journey on with the SAP account internally at Televerdi, and that was really my first exposure to technology. And then once I learned about it, I couldn't stop. So kept following that nudge that other people will give me that took me to the next step in the career journey.
Nice. Okay, I'll be honest. I was in healthcare. So at the time, I was a respiratory therapist doing critical care in ICU. My husband was an engineer, and I came off a 16-hour shift on a weekend, and my husband was in his pajamas working from home. And I'm like, listen, I can't be an engineer. I know my limitations. And he's like, listen, you're a bossy bitch. He's like, I need you to look into being a PM. And so I'm like, yes. So I went back to LSU. I got my MBA in project management. I went to my husband's company, bless his heart, and I was an intern and never left. And so from there, right place, right time, I ended up building out a managed services PMO, and then I just kind of went everything IT.
So I was thinking about if I had to describe my journey in one word, it's going to be a tough one. What would I say and why? So some of the ones that I pick, because I cheated beforehand. So my answers are a lot easier than yours. I would say evolving for me, because I feel like no matter how much I've learned and know and have to understand, I feel like I'm always evolving and changing, both in knowledge, skill set, and pretty much everything. I don't think I've ever stopped learning since I started. I promise you I wasn't calling you first. We'll still go to Meredith.
I'm first.
This one you got.
This is also very hard to get it down to one word, but I came up with engaging, because no matter what part of the journey that you're on, it's about building that relationship. So whether it's, your path, your career, the partnership, and sort of what we do in the IT world, right? It always came back to the engagement. So for me, it's engaging.
Mine is really hard for one word, so we're going to call it Newton, but it's Newton's law of physics. So objects in motion stay in motion, objects at rest stay in rest. So as long as you are moving forward, you're going to continue doing so, but the moment you stop, you're done. So it's always been about progressing and always being brave enough to take that next step, even if you don't know what that next step is going to result in. Yeah, Newton.
Okay. I would go with unlikely because it's very unlikely that I ever ended here, and not just from IT, but if you ever get to know my past, I think I dropped out of high school the second day of my 10th grade year. I was on drugs, hard drugs, from 13 to 21. So the fact that I made it out from where I started and even made it here today is just unlikely.
So we'll stay with you for a minute because you segued me again. Let's talk a little bit about some of the biggest career challenges you face, right? I know we had a conversation when we kind of first met. Let's talk a little bit about some of the career challenges, the biggest ones we face. If it's one, if it's two, what do you think? Because we all have had them, right? So Holly, I'll stay with you for a minute.
I've had a ton. Some were internal, just from my past, trying to catch up and feeling unworthy, like I didn't believe I should be there. The first time I got direct reports, I'm like, oh my God, they trust me? Like, I shouldn't be here. Because from where I came from, education and success was just not the environment. It was not stress. So trying to be in a professional atmosphere when you don't grow up around that or know what that looks like I had 3 people in my household. So my grandmother had a 2nd grade education, was illiterate. My dad had a 6th grade education, and my mom was a high school dropout. So education was never taught to me in how to act in public. And so my biggest career challenge, I think, was myself and overcoming what I had in my head in order to be at the table. And so now I can go into a boardroom with confidence. I can speak to anyone with confidence, but it took me years to get there, whether it was healthcare, whether it was IT. It was myself and being able to trust other people, because even though there's not a lot of women in technology, and you would think because of that other women would lift you up, that's not always the case. And so I've had a huge challenge thinking that's the case and being walked all over or being taken advantage of because of my misconceptions. So I think those are the 2 biggest things that I've had to work through.
I didn't realize we had so much in common. We have a lot in common.
Mhm.
I think mine was going into the sales
Mhm.
division. Like I grew up with the conception that sales is like not a real credible career path, right? Like you think of going and buying a used car and it's somebody's pushing something on you that you don't need. And early in my career, I had to interact with a lot of those salespeople when I was still in client success. But everybody, like my boss, the CEO, everybody wanted me to move into sales. And I was very, very, very highly resistant because I never wanted to have happen to me what apparently was happening to all these people, where they had a quota and it was taking over the way they interacted with other people. But our CEO called me into his office, or our previous CEO, and he told me that if you only worry about what your customers need, you never have to worry about your quota a day in your life. And it's my company, and you don't really have a choice. So you're going in sales starting January 1st. But that was a huge one, because being able to reconcile the fact that sales doesn't have to be going to meet a number, and driving and having that number override the way you interact with your peers or with your clients. And it worked out quite well.
Before we go to merit, so elaborate on it a little bit, because it's one of the things that I have to learn how to elaborate that, right? Because if you take care of your customers, right, and you interact with your customers as people, friends, right, you don't have to worry about the number will follow.
Yeah. So I think what happens is that a lot of salespeople are just worried about going and selling their products. Whereas if you're doing your job well and you're staying in line with your clients' priorities and their needs and what their strategic objectives are, and that matches with an offering that you can help them achieve those objectives with, then you're actually gaining credibility from that prospect or that client. And that's what you want at the end of the day. You want to use your words, have a seat at the table. You want to be a strategic partner. You never want to be in a client-vendor relationship. And honestly, that's where the majority of our programs that are not successful will not be successful. If we're just an execution engine as opposed to providing insight and help on how they can reach their goals.
Yeah, so mine is like, how do you keep that spark alive? It's very easy to get complacent in the day to day, starting to lose your passion. And then what do you do about it, right? You can sit there and, be negative and get caught up in that moment, or you can find little ways to change that. Is it taking on a special project? Is it just communicating with somebody to make sure that your voice is heard? But trusting your gut through that. So if you start to feel it's hard to show up, or I'm not sure I like what I'm doing at this moment, take advantage of that and find your mentor, find somebody in the company and have the conversation. Because many times it's like, you're really good at this. We really need you to move over here and start working on this project. So trust that when you're having a hard time or you're having a hard time showing up, trust that and then build out a plan and take that to move forward.
I think sometimes obstacles too are not just an external obstacle, they're internal obstacles. I think I find more internal obstacles than I find external obstacles, right? It's not necessarily one thing that happens, it's overcoming imposter syndrome, things like that are obstacles in your way of succeeding, confidence in yourself that keep you from succeeding, right? Because you hold yourself back. Everybody has obstacles in their career, whether it's a coworker, a boss, a client, a vendor, everyone's got them, right? It's just learning to overcome what you're going through and be confident in yourself and your ability to get through it, I think. Right? Get that seat at the table. And I think that's one of the challenges. You always feel that. I always walk into a room and, everyone always tells me if there's no seat, pull up a folding chair, making sure that you have your spot there, right? So, I guess how do we tell people that if they're walking into a room, how they feel comfortable and confident in themselves when they walk in? I can't do that because I never do. Remember, the most confident, self-conscious person on the planet. Alicia, you go.
Oh man.
Right.
It's a really interesting question because my sister works in one of the top 5 accounting firms, and she was telling me about a training program that they had to help women take up space in the rooms that they're in. Because if you pay attention to women, all your stuff is right in front of you. You'll notice that a lot of women sit outside of the side of the room, so they'll get the seats there because they don't necessarily think they deserve a seat at the table. And one of the great things about Celebrity is that we'd show up for meetings 5 minutes early because you didn't get a seat at the table unless you showed up 5 minutes early because everybody was crowding it. But to the point, it's realizing that you're the one that thinks you shouldn't be there. But if you're using your voice and you have an idea and you bring up that idea, that's what gets you the credibility and the recognition and participating. You have to participate. And a lot of people will let that imposter syndrome that's inside block you from using your voice in those times. And you have to push through that because that's the only way that you're going to help other people see the value that you're bringing to the conversation.
Anything to add, Holly, you think?
I think that the biggest thing to that is don't be afraid of failure. And that's what I had to tell myself. If you speak up, if you participate, what is the worst thing that's going to happen? You're going to stay in the same spot you're at. I mean, that's not even failure, but if it makes you go further and you succeed just a little bit, then you're better than you were before. So, I mean, coming from extreme poverty, it's like, what's the worst I could do? Lose my job? I could rock that. It's okay. So you have to take those chances and believe in yourself because no one's going to do it for you. You have to take accountability.
Anything?
Anything
to add, Meredith?
Trust your gut, believe in yourself, find your cheerleader, whether that's inside the organization, outside the organization. Everybody needs that pep talk sometimes, and it's just to get yourself ready. Always have a question prepared. I'm a game show moment person. You could ask me the same question and I'd be like, I don't know. But I would know that inside and out if I could prep and prepare, and so take the moment, take a deep breath and just try to stay engaged.
Well, we talked a little bit in March about allyship, right? How important allyship is, right? And I think it's super important, right? Because you need allies and people on your side. It also gives you the confidence, right? To kind of step forward and do what you need to do and be able to do anything in your career. I think without allies, building that inner circle of allies, you're very alone, right? As you rise the corporate ladder, you get more lonely as you go to the top. And I think those allies are still there. My allies are like vendors or distributors, right? If I have a problem, I can call Meredith on the phone and just say whatever I have to and get an outsider's opinion. Where does allyship fit with you guys in terms of obstacles? right? Because you need those allies to help you overcome obstacles. So I'll go back this way, Meredith.
Yeah. So for me, I can say to my husband, my family member, like what my issue is at work, and they have no idea what I'm talking about. They think I plan parties for computers, really. Having that allyship within the industry, you can cut through the back end, the story. It's like I have, and I've told this story before if you heard me speak, I have a friend that we do 7-minute Friday catch up. So do you have 7 minutes? And it all started because we had 7 minutes before our next call, because there's always a call. So she's like, I have 7 minutes. What do you need? And we didn't have to get through the how are you? What's going on? It's like, here's the issue. And sometimes you just need to know that what you're thinking is okay. Sometimes you need the honest, you know what, you gotta put that aside and think about it differently. So I love just having people in the industry that know what we're talking about, know what day-to-day challenges we're all facing, but not always tell you that you're right. You need somebody to also say, think about it different, or have you thought about it this way? And so for me, that's true allyship and advisors and in any capacity. So that's important.
I would 100% agree. 100% agree. And the thing that's so important along with that is authenticity. So you have to be able to come across as your true authentic self, and you have to trust that the person you're communicating with is also authentic and giving it to you 100%. Because to your point, you don't want somebody to always validate you, and you don't want somebody to always tell you that you're correct. You want somebody who's going to provide that input that's going to make you adjust so that what your messages will land better.
Yeah. I think I'll piggyback off what you said. The higher up you get, the lonelier it gets, because I have all of my direct reports. We have vent sessions. They are welcome to call me. They can say or do whatever they want. They have 30 minutes a week that we sit aside, that we can joke around. It's not even a one-on-one. It's just a venting session. But I don't really have anyone to vent to. I report to the president, so I can't always just go to him and complain. And so you have to find that one person. It's an obstacle because, like I said, just like you would assume other women would want to build you up, you have to be careful on who you vent to and what you vent. And so you have to find that one person. For me, I have found that ride or die. Her name is Melissa, and she was actually my first hire that I ever did. And we are still friends to this day, but I know that I can call her with anything, and that's where it stays. So you have to find that one person and be very careful when you do it. But when you find them, hold on to them because they are invaluable.
I lost my train of thought, which happens a lot more than I'd like these days. So what are some of the things, like some of the tricks that we use, right, during moments of self-doubt, right? How you get over that? Like, what do you do to help yourself get over self-doubt, right? We talked about having an ally. I think that's part of it, right? And sometimes it has to be an external ally, someone that you may need on the outside that you pay. You too run out of people, you know? So in moments of self-doubt, like for me, I have to, it takes me a while to shake it off. It does. It's not as easy to shake off as it used to be. Things get harder, times get harder, things get more difficult, companies grow and get bigger. So self-doubt, it gets harder to shake off. For me, it's external people, outside people who don't really live in your world, but you just need an external outsider's view to level you, right? What are some of the things that you do, Meredith, to kind of, I guess, rebalance yourself, as Val always says?
Yeah, and it's hard, right? It's hard to get that repeat cycle out of your head sometimes. You just replay the moment over and over, or I wish I said this, or, you know, even just recently, sometimes you just have to take the moment, breathe, step away from it, go for a walk. Like I go to walk to the mailbox, kind of just get myself out of that. I recently just heard of this 5-4-3-2-1 exercise to try to get you out of that moment. So stop and take 5. What do you see? So just quickly, like, what do you see? What do you hear? What do you taste? What do you smell? I can't remember what do you hear? And it doesn't matter what order, but it helps you get out of that moment of self-doubt and just recenter and rebalance. And you get better at it as time goes on. And then it's like, oh, wait a minute, I can think of a different, fresh perspective of this or whatever. So take the moment, whatever works for you. Sometimes it's just taking the rest of the day to move on to a different project and come back to it with a fresh perspective, you know, on Monday or whatever. So That's what works for me. And outside of calling your mentor or, having that voice that you can quick call. But if you're really in that moment and you're, just take the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 and kind of get rebalanced. So.
I am an extremely analytical, bordering on paranoid person. So like I will think about things and then I will think about all of the extenuating circumstances or how other people are perceiving the situation and like create this whole whirlwind of what could be, but I have no idea if it is what is, but it could be. And there's two results. One is something happens and I get angry, and we all know it is never a good idea to respond when you're angry. So that's where you got to push pause. The other one is when it is the self-doubt. And did I do this wrong, or am I, well, usually I'll think like 5 times a week, 3 to 5 times a week. Oh my God, I'm going to get fired. Oh my God, that was it. That was the email I sent. That was the conversation I had. Oh my God, I'm going to get fired, which is a completely preposterous thing, but it's very real in my head. But for me, it's stepping out of the situation. Like I see everything from first party, I'm in it. But if I can remove myself from the situation and look at it from the outside and just look at facts and the influences that are outside of those facts, such as my team's doing exactly what they need to do. Yes, I was very direct in that email. We want people to be very direct in that email. But taking the personal out of the situation is a way that it's allowed me to kind of come down from whatever it is that I'm dealing with in my head and be able to address it and move forward.
I think self-doubt for me is still there. I still struggle with it day in, day out. I'm OCD. I'm very analytical. I'm very critical of myself more than others. So I think over the years, it's giving myself grace, because I used to be such a perfectionist. I wanted to carry myself a certain way. I had to use the correct words. Now, as you can see, I really don't care. I'm a little bit more real as I've gotten older. And I think you have to have a moment in your life where you realize that. And for everyone, it's different. I got laid off from a job. And I immediately was like, oh my God, I'm going to go back to healthcare because no one else is going to want me in IT. This is my only job. What do I do? And it took that moment for me to realize that I had to give myself grace and overcome that. And I was very blessed that I have never applied for a job. Once I got let off, I had job offers coming to me because they had known me from the industry. And I think it was that for me that allowed myself to realize that I had to give myself grace, if that makes sense.
Let's shift a little bit about navigating workplace dynamics. Was there ever a time, well, I'm sure there was, where you ever felt overlooked or underestimated, right? I would say my entire career. I think one time, I always remember people telling me, you're just a girl, you don't know how to do business. That's a big one for me that sticks in my head. And I was like, okay, no, girl knows better. So I think there's a lot of times you feel overlooked or underestimated, especially as females in tech. Meredith, anything stick in your mind that you can think of?
Yeah, and it happens. I think it's that selfless, or you're thinking the worst about yourself, and you can't get out of that loop. And when you peel that back, it really comes down to a communication, right? Find out what that hurdle is and go to the source and how can I do better? Or do you know all the great things I can do? Or do you even know my background, right? And sometimes it's just that lack of communication or something that needs to get down to the root and then figure out how do we move forward from here. So it's hard. It's hard to figure that out. It takes some time to figure like what that issue is. And then who to have the conversation with. But, then
that's a tough one.
There's a lot of layers to it, right? So and most of the time it's different perspectives. I thought I heard them say this. They didn't mean that at all. So you just have to show up, advocate for yourself, and have those conversations.
I think my defining moment in this particular topic is probably 3 years into my sales career, and granted, one of the best salespeople I've ever met in my life, and he was my boss. And we were on site at a customer proposal presentation or a customer discovery presentation. Went to dinner with the client. We're at the hotel afterwards, prepping for the next day, and it was an all-day scoping exercise essentially. And a couple of martinis in, and my boss told me, your job tomorrow is just to sit in the corner and take notes. Remember, I told you it's either self-doubt or anger, and anger came out. And I said it. I was like, I need you to know how disrespectful that is. I need you to know that you can't talk to people like that, and it's not cool. And then puffed off and went to bed. The next day, we're in the meeting with the whole table of executives at the client site, and we're kicking off the meeting. And instead of him taking over, he's just sitting there doodling in his notebook. And it's like, Jim, do you have any questions? And he just continued doodling in his notebook. So I went into discovery, right? It was like a 3-hour meeting. Turned it over at the end, asked him if he had any more questions, and he didn't have any questions. Packed up, left, and when we got in the car, he was like, well, I guess you do know how to do your job. The only difference is how do we get 20 years of experience into your brain? And like the validation of standing up for myself, number one, number two, being able to deliver when the time came, and number three, getting his validation that maybe I do know my stuff. But you can't help but think how many people would not have responded like that. And that can be a life-defining moment, but with a totally negative outcome. So pushing through, but using your voice, right?
Mhm.
Pushing back if it's something that you don't believe in as well is critical.
All right, so let me preface this story with the gentleman that said this to me. I respect. It did not come from a place of malice. And I honestly don't think he knew what he was saying. But my husband and I worked for the same company. My husband, like I said, was an engineer. He was a manager at the time. And I was a manager. So he was over engineering. I was over at the PMO. There was a new position that was opening, and we were both up for director. So we were at a bar where most business takes place, and we're sitting there talking, and the AVP came up to me. He's like, hey, just to let you know, with this new position, we have been talking, and both you and your husband's name has been thrown around. He's like, of course, I let them know that you would step down from the position because you would want your husband to succeed instead of you. And I at that moment, I felt so less than, and I started questioning myself. I'm like, is this how it always is? Is it going to be between me and a man, and they're going to assume that they need the role because they're the head of the household? Or if I stay at this company, is it always going to come down between me and my husband? Because at some point, one of us had to leave because we could not report to one another. But I stood my ground, and I'm like, well, why would you make that assumption? I'm like, if my husband was to get director, I'd be very proud of him. If I got it, I know he would be proud of me, which I did make director before my husband, but he is director now. But in that moment, that was a huge self-doubt and something where I felt overlooked.
I'm going to stay with you for a second. Balancing assertiveness to likability, right? From a woman's perspective, right? Assertive turns into something different
Mhm.
than a male who is assertive, right? So how does someone balance being assertive and likability?
Okay. So my favorite boss, and I'll use his name because I love him to death, is John Carter. But John is from the South. He's from Georgia. I'm from Georgia, by the way. You probably hear my accent. And I am very direct. I've always been a very direct person. And specifically in business, when I first started out, I thought you had to be direct because that's what you see in the movies. You see all these men up there and they're like matter of fact. And so, like I told you, that's how I mimicked myself because I was not brought up in that environment. And one day he took me aside and he's like, Holly, he's like, honey, you're a woman in the South. He's like, you catch more bears with honey, so you need to tone it down. You can't go in there like a man. And he's like, you're awesome. He's like, that's the culture we're dealing with, and you need to be aware of the culture. He's like, it's not my thoughts, it's not everyone else's thoughts, but this is how people perceive you. So you have to read the room. And he said it better than that, obviously, but I respected that. And it's a challenge for me because I'm a very direct, I'm a very loud person. And I do struggle with that, but I do try to read the room and I try to be respectful to the culture that I'm in. Like I can talk differently to New Yorkers than I can someone from down south, and it's just the way it is.
This is something I battle with on an ongoing basis because I want you get to catch more flies with honey as opposed to vinegar, and I want people to be on board with the direction. But something that I've learned pretty recently is that that's not really the way to get things done all the time, right? If it's with your team, if it's interacting with your team, getting the this is what I said and this is how it's going to be executed. But one of the things that I coach other people to often is kind of taking out the feeling, right? When you're communicating with somebody, it's taking out the feeling as far as what you're saying. So a lot of times people will be like, well, it's passion and passion is important and I'm not going to stuff my passion for any reason. Like passion and emotion can be close, tightly aligned. But if you're going to deliver a bad message and you do that with passion, it can come across very, very poorly. Whereas you give it as a fact it takes out a lot of people's ability to respond negatively. But likability versus assertiveness is really it is a delicate type of.
It's a delicate balance, very thin line between the two. Because if you're very passionate too,
Mm-hmm.
it's a very fine line. And people who are very assertive, right? There's a lot of us are assertive here. So it's really hard because it gets taken the wrong way. And you do try to choose your words, and when you're speaking, you do try it very carefully. It doesn't always work. It bites me in the ass more than I'd like. Meredith, any thought from you?
Yeah, I mean, this one's a hard one for me. I'm not a very assertive person, so when it comes out, people kind of know, like, oh, okay. But I also think on the flip side is there are times you just have to make hard decisions, and you're not going to be liked for it, and whether it's a change on the team or a change in the project, and that's where I go back to what you said is stick to the facts, right? It's take the emotion out, and here's what we need to do. Be very clear on the priorities, be very clear on how we're going to get there, and then keep everybody accountable. So
let's talk about growth and leadership. What strategy, is there any strategies or anything that you've used to kind of help get you where you are today? For me, I'll start. I even have an answer for that one. I just started with me. I didn't practice the question as much as I'd like to. What was the question though? Darn it. I've lost my place. Oh, the strategies. I think for me, I have to constantly practice strong, confident, positive. Constantly, I balance that a lot. So those are things that I need to kind of work on. Those are my strategies. Always working on things like that. The 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 that we've learned. Stuff like that, because it's hard to lift others up if you're not high enough yourself. Any specific things that you do? I know we talked about the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 that we learned through Val's group. Is there anything else that you use in terms of, being able to stay where you need to be, balanced, and from a career leadership direction, being able to lead people? Yes, I lost my place.
First, so focusing on your controllables. Like, there's so many things that happen in business that could be like people aren't acting fairly, or somebody's favorite, or like there's a problem in a different area of the business that isn't necessarily your area of the business. And it's always been put the blinders on and fix what you can fix. Control your controllables, because it's so easy to get fed into everything else that's happening, right? Distraction's a real thing. And if you divert your focus from what you should be focusing on, then nothing gets done. So it's really expressing to the rest of the team that whatever else is happening, wherever else it's happening, if we only focus on what it is that we control and we influence, then everything else will fix itself. But it's being brave too, right? Like that whole emotion component of it. People have gotten angry with me because I don't show emotion in that way. But that's a whole distraction tactic as well. If you can stay laser focused on what it is that you and your team can impact and get rid of the rest of the noise, it tends to inspire the rest of the team as well to follow in kind.
Yeah. For me, my strategy, even early on, was total accountability. And it's something that is extremely hard to do if you do it right. Going in there and taking account, not only for me, but for my team. If they do something wrong, I take accountability for it. I can coach them on the back end, but it's my fault regardless. Even if it's not my fault, it's my fault, and it's total accountability. I think it's because I married someone from the military and I was around military for a very long time. That's kind of stayed with me, that and the firefighting background. So that's that, and authenticity, just being able to talk and not pretend. You can't fake it. Just if you don't know it, either you're going to work really hard in the background to figure it out, and I've done that, or just say, I don't know, but I will figure it out. Just be honest, be direct, and have total accountability.
I think one of the important traits of overcoming obstacle is resilience, right? Being able to be resilient in the face of all that goes on a daily basis, right? What are some of the ways that you've built your resiliency, Holly? We'll just go back the other way.
My resilience. I don't give up. I have an tremendous amount of grit. I have really thick skin, and it's taken years to build that up. And I think that's helped me overcome a lot of things, giving myself grace, having that grit, and just to keep on trying, because like I said, at the end of the day, if you don't, what's the worst that you can do? You start over. You've already been there. You know what to do. It's not new. So it's just, again, giving yourself grace and having that thick skin.
I love that word, grit. It's one of my
Mhm.
favorites, because that is it, being able to continue to persevere no matter what.
Mhm.
And yes, you can have the biggest obstacle. Yes, you can fall into the biggest hole, all of those things. But the most important thing is that you keep moving.
Mhm.
As saying, how many times do you fail in order to succeed? But the failure is just as important as the success. So,
Keep showing up and then try to learn from it. So in the moment, it's hard, and it may not be at that exact time where you figure out why this happened. How did you learn from it? It could be months or even years down the road, but you're going to go back and look at what that obstacle was and say, this is why I went through this. This is how I achieved it or survived it or whatever that is. And then the next time it comes up, that's the resilience of like, I know how to react to this. And in the moment when you're going through it, it's really hard. But like to your point, give yourself some grace in that time, because then you'll know how to react to that. Something similar should happen again.
What suggestions do we think we have for women managing teams, right, in times of uncertainty? It's going to be a very gray line here on the answer to this question, right? In times of uncertainty, right? Sometimes there's things that are going on that are outside of our control, right? You still have to kind of go on. You still have to go get through your obstacles and build your business, your brand, right? Your network, your departments, right? What ways have you been able to help other people in terms of being able to get past the outside noise that's going on, right? Because there's a lot going on in the world, right? So being able to see past that and just to keep yourself moving in the right direction.
So transparency, number one, and it's okay to say, I don't know either, but we're going to figure it out together. They will respect you more for saying, I don't know, than to say, well, we're going to, do this and not have a reason why, right? And so open communication, try things, learn from it, pivot quickly. I mean, those are all sort of the things to learn from, and you'll gain that respect not only from your team, but I think for your peers in the moment too, to build that out and take it forward.
agree with all of that. And it goes back to putting your blinders on and worrying about what it is that you control the controllables and work on what it is that falls within your remit for the team. But the other thing is there's the people that lead, expect everybody to follow, and there's the people that get their hands dirty doing the work as well. So if you can go in and show them, right? Show the team that it's possible, leading by example.
No, I love that answer, because there is a massive difference. Having a title behind your name does not mean anything. There's a manager and there's a leader. Just because you have a title does not mean you are a leader. And I briefly, thank God it was only briefly, reported to someone who had a title behind their name but was not a leader. And it made her focus was to break people down. And I now realize that she was very insecure. But I learned more from her on what not to do, and I took that through. And so I always make sure I build my people up. Whatever obstacle they're facing, ask that stupid question, because you think it's stupid, but it might actually be a valid question. So there's nothing I ask my team to do that I am not willing to go and do myself. If something goes wrong, I will get down there in the trenches with them, which I'm in a project right now. I went back to being a PM because they needed help, because I wanted them to succeed. So I never ask anyone to do anything I'm not willing to do.
I think that's an important part of it, because I always tell people the same thing. I always kind of roll up my sleeves, get my hands dirty. I've never done anything. I've never asked someone to do anything I wouldn't do myself. And that's a really important piece, because it builds character, right? I have a hard time letting go of the things I supposed to let go of, but that's okay. For those coming into tech, for those newer and younger in the tech space, what advice would you give them in terms of where to find support, where to find help, right? What can they turn to, right? I know that we have, our Women in the Channel community, right? There's a lot of people within that community. There's a good number of us up here that have met through that community. Right? That's how you build your brand. Is there any other ways that you can help build your network, and where can you find support, or people find support when they need it?
So there's a lot of local industry associations. I'm in cybersecurity, so there might be local associations. You can certainly go there and find your peer network. Sometimes it's, for me, one of the things I like to do is kind of the pay it forward. So look for somebody who's new and upcoming in your organization or in your industry, and you're going to learn from them as much as I'm going to help them, right? So it's a little bit of that push and pull. And then I think just, again, like, look at your network, look at maybe your favorite boss. I love what you said earlier, like, who do you want to aspire to be, and find out what they do and help follow in there as well. So.
A couple things. So I'm a huge introvert. I just don't go out and talk to people because it's fun. And one of the things that I did to overcome that was read a book called Never Eat Alone by Keith Ferrazzi. If you haven't read it, you should totally read it, especially if you're an introvert. But the network is a ever giving, ever learning, ever evolving thing. And what that book taught me was how to connect with people and then how to maintain those relationships on an ongoing basis. And it's very real. So people, you're going to learn more from a person. Let me back up. So I was on eharmony.com for a period of time, very short period of time. So I went on 3 dates, and it was the most horrifying experience. And got off of eharmony.com. And then when I left my house to go to a friend's birthday party, that's how I met my husband. So doing a whole bunch of digital things is great. You're informing your area of expertise, but you don't really get as much as you can until you're going outside of yourself. You're going and interacting with other people and building those relationships, because they evolve into wonderful things. And you'll get more that way than you would by sitting in front of a computer. And as an introvert, I'm telling you, and it's enforced, it will work.
So I'm different. I'm an extrovert. I will talk to a fence post. It doesn't bother me. I just talk to everybody. I have a lack of fear, and that would be my advice: is just take away the fear. I remember whenever I was at CDI, and I think I started there as an intern, which, by the way, I went from like director level at a hospital to a $13 an hour internship in my mid 30s. It hurt very, very much. But I stayed there. I made director in like 4 years. But I remember, I think I might have been an intern or very low level. I wrote a note to the VP, and I'm like, will you mentor me? I'm like, I want to learn. And he's like, yeah, so just ask. And so I set up Mr. Miyagi sessions, and I'm like, I am your little grasshopper, just teach me. And we are such good friends to this day. We've gone our separate ways, but we will still dial up, and I know that I can ask him anything and it'll stay with him, or the same thing, if he needs a favor, he can call me. But it all started with just an email, will you mentor me? And I was nobody in that company, and he agreed to it. And now I will mentor anyone. I was actually on the phone the other day. No one that I worked with, it was a client. Somehow I got into a pre-sales conversation. It was a major client, and there was this girl, she had just graduated college, and she's like, I don't know what to say. She's like, I'm so sorry, this is my first call. And I'm like, guys, stop the call. I'm like, I want you to take a deep breath. And after this call, we're going to get through it. You're going to call me, and I'm going to mentor you. I'm going to teach you how to do your job. And so now we actually talk. I met her in person not too long ago. But don't be afraid to ask. Take that fear away. Introvert, extrovert, send an email and just ask. The worst thing they're going to do is say no, and you move on to the next person. Someone will say yes, and that one person will be that person that can change your whole career path.
So before we run out of time, one thing you would tell your younger self, Holly?
Don't do it. That's pretty much blanket across. Just if I could go back and tell myself, it would be, don't be scared of failure, because I was scared of failure for a very long time. And it's like, I think I've been successful. I'm happy where I'm at, but just imagine where I could have been if I wasn't scared to fail.
It's the exact same thing. You have to be brave, right? You have to take the step. Even my whole thing was I didn't want to play if I wasn't going to win. So if I was not positive I would succeed, I wouldn't take the first step. And that prevented me from doing a lot of things in life that ultimately I figured it out. Ultimately, I figured you need to be able to progress down these paths, even if you don't know what the end result is going to be. But it is be brave. So I came up with different words.
You got it.
Mine is continue to speak up. If there's a project that's happening that you want to learn about, say, can I come to that meeting? That's how I figured out what my passion was, because there was an opportunity. Everybody was running from it, and I was like, I want to do that. And they're like, really? So find out what that is and just speak up and say, can I attend the meeting, or can I be part of the project crew to understand more about that and figure out what your passion is.
So we are out of time. Thank you very much for your time today, for coming in and sharing your stories. Thank you for everyone online. Thank you for the wonderful chat comments. Thank you for those that came here today. For those that are coming to the party tomorrow night, we will see you tomorrow night. If not, we will catch you in September for the next edition of Women in Tech. Thank you.